When I was a junior high school student, a small boy fell and died in the local school area. The next day, there was an article in the newspaper that called him an unidentified boy. Unidentified must have meant that he was injured so bad, or that the accident was so bad that they couldn't tell who he was. At least, that's what I thought. A few days later, I heard some more details from one of my friends. The boy who died didn't live in the area, and none of the kids who were playing with him beforehand had any idea who he was. Nobody knew his parents, his relatives, or his school. We never found out who he was. The neighborhood council talked about setting up a small shrine, or a Jizzo statue for the boy, but despite not understanding the circumstances around his death, they were unsure of what to do, and in the end, did nothing. That's the story my mother told me anyway. These days, people have been moving out of that area, and over half the buildings and apartments have closed down. Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Did you know that you can get access to over 20 exclusive bonus episodes, as well as early access to all episodes, by joining our Patreon? It's your support that helps keep this show running, and we're currently halfway to our goal of increasing the length of all episodes as well. If you'd like even more content, or just want to show your support, you can head over to patreon.com/TaraADevlin. Every single bit helps. On this week's show, we're looking at tales of monsters, tales of the unexplained, tales that will stick with you long after they've finished. Our first story for this week is about a young boy who finds a secret room in his grandmother's house. What's really lurking in the shadows there? Find out in Upside Down. This happened about 20 years ago, when I was just an elementary school student and went to visit my grandma's house in the countryside. They used to raise silkworms at my grandma's house, so while it was really old, it was also really big. My grandpa died before I was born, so at the time, my mother's younger brother and his family lived with her in the big house. The house was full of old furniture, so us grandkids loved exploring inside. There was a shrine nearby that was famous for horseback archery, and there was a legend that a tengu appeared there in the past as well. Apparently, my mother saw lots of strange stuff there when she was a kid. Sometime around Obon, it was the middle of summer, and I remember the heat. As usual, us kids all got together and ran around the house. I was the oldest, and my mother's younger sister's kid was 1 year younger. Her youngest sister also had 2 kids, who were 3 or 4 years younger than me. We all ate lunch together, and then we played around the house for about 2 hours. As the 2 youngest kids went for their afternoon nap, myself and my other cousin went to the storage room on the 2nd floor. The room used to house the silkworms in the past. We climbed up on the beams and over the old furniture like always. Sunlight filtered in through the window, giving the area a dim glow. I saw 2 large cardboard boxes, and I wanted to jump down from the furniture onto them, so I leapt with all my might. I landed with a thud and sent dust flying everywhere. I got off the boxes, coughing, and noticed the impact of my landing had crushed the top of the boxes in. I could see something inside. "What's that?" I wondered. Inside was a tengu mask and a fan, like a festival costume maybe. Something like that. Come to think of it, my uncle used to wear a costume like that to the local shrine's festival. I was fascinated by all the old stuff in the box. Then my cousin said something that caught my attention. "Hey, there's a door here." A door? That's odd. We'd searched our grandma's house high and low while playing, but I didn't remember a door being there. But there it was. Perhaps when I jumped on the cardboard boxes they moved, revealing the door hidden behind them. Filled to the brim with curiosity, I shoved the boxes out of the way and nervously opened the door. It seemed to be an open space above the ceiling. There was nothing there. No. Looking closer, I could see something on the wall on the other side. What was it? I wanted to know, so I decided to go in. My cousin came with me. The floor beneath us was strange, however. It wasn't hard like the rest of the house, but felt like thin boards. Just in case, we proceeded slowly across the beams instead. There wasn't much room above our heads. The ceiling was so low that even I, an elementary school kid, had to stoop to walk. There were no windows, but light filtered in through the gaps, so it was bright enough to see. We finally reached the other side, and I checked what that thing on the wall was. It was a single piece of paper. A charm. However, it was hung upside down. Even stranger than that, though, was that it was stuck to the wall by a nail. Thinking back on it now, I regret what I did next. I was just a kid, so I wasn't thinking. I pulled the nail out and grabbed the charm, looking at it this way and that. There was no doubt that it had been there for quite some time. There was something written on it in kanji, but I couldn't read it. Looking closer at the nail, I realized it was actually an arrow. Then, a large sound scared me. My cousin was also surprised. It sounded like an adult walking. Had someone come upstairs? But there was still something strange. Listening closer, the sound was coming from the floor beneath what we were standing on. I thought it might have been coming from downstairs, but that wasn't it. It was clearly the sound of something walking. Walking on the ceiling beneath us. What the hell? I'd seen stuff like that in anime and manga before, but that sound wasn't fake. It was 100% real. My cousin was so scared he started crying. At any rate, I knew that if we didn't get out of there, and soon, that nothing good would come of it. I grabbed my cousin's hand and dragged him back across the beams towards the door. I did my best not to make any sound. The footsteps seemed to be coming from all over the place, like it was looking for something. Then, the arrow that was in my pocket fell out. Crap, I thought, and immediately it was followed by the sounds of scurrying footsteps. It was directly beneath us. Something was breathing and scratching at the floor with its claws? I was at peak fear levels. My cousin was so scared his eyes were shut tight and he was nearly completely frozen. Then, I saw something on the floor. A hole. There was a roughly 3 centimeter wide hole in the floor. The thing on the other side was desperately trying to look through it. We were just 10 meters from the door. We might not make it. Or so I thought. I went to pick the arrow up and slowly approached the hole. My heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. Nervously, I looked down at the hole. Our eyes met. I screamed, grabbed the arrow, and shoved it into the hole. It fell to the floor below. Now's our chance, I thought, and grabbed my cousin's hand again, running for the door as fast as I could. As soon as we were out, I slammed the door shut and hid it behind the cardboard boxes again. We stood there for a while, frozen, in silence from fear. The light outside had turned to evening. It wasn't long until our parents called out for us to come down for dinner. I put my hand in my pocket as I went downstairs. Oddly, the charm wasn't there. Seeing my cousin crying, my mother said, "Did you make him cry again? Play nicely." I could barely taste dinner. What was that thing? How was it so noisy, but no one else noticed it? After dinner, my cousin's family went back home. We lived far away, so we stayed the night. I was so scared I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I asked my grandma about it. She said she didn't know anything about such a room. Neither did my grandpa, she said. There was no way. I took her upstairs and moved the cardboard boxes, but there was no door. What the? I tried to comprehend what was going on, but it was useless. Then my grandma told me a story. In the past, numerous people from that area were kidnapped by a tengu, especially children. That's why the shrine started to hold a festival. She told me I should go visit the shrine, so I went there with my parents. It appeared my mother believed my story, and she explained to me that charms were something we should be grateful for, and not something to be messed around with. She also told me that when she was a child, she also ran into a tengu, but was lucky enough not to get taken away. I met my cousin at another cousin's wedding a few years back, but he'd completely forgotten about what happened that day. As for what I saw in the hole in the floor, I still don't know. Our last story for this week is about a strange woman who can't stop laughing. Most of the people in town ignore her, but one man can't stop himself from having a little fun at her expense. A little fun he soon starts to regret. Find out why in The Laughing Woman. Last Friday, one of my colleagues named Omura died. I didn't see for myself, but apparently he was found dead in his own apartment with ball pens shoved in both ears. His hands were clenched around the pens, so the police quickly ruled it a suicide. Everyone at work found the way he died to be suspicious, but I wasn't terribly surprised. Still, they apparently had to do an autopsy anyway, so I imagine they did some pretty detailed investigation of his corpse. I think it's kind of unfortunate that they needed to cut him up to do that though. His wake was held soon after, and everyone from the same department followed the department head to the public funeral hall. I told him that I had some business that I couldn't get away from, however, so I took my leave and went straight back. It might have seemed strange to everyone else, but wakes are so gloomy and quiet. I can't stand them. Omura worked in the company for longer than me, but we were good friends regardless. By telling you that we both knew each other's addresses, I wonder if that gets across just how close we were. 3 weeks ago, Omura even stopped by my place after work for drinks. We drank beer and talked shit about everyone at work. We were the type of guys who, when we drank, enjoyed just talking, so we didn't have any TV or music on either. We were kinda gloomy guys, yeah. We soon finished all the beer. I was fine chatting even without beer, but not Omura. He said we should go buy some more. We left the apartment and went to the nearby supermarket to get some. "Hey, what's that?" Omura said, grinning, shortly after we entered the store. A woman with long, messy hair that reached her backside was holding a shopping cart, looking through some vegetables. It was an ordinary sight that you might see anywhere, except for one thing. The woman was laughing loudly. She was laughing out loud, holding a lettuce. Even so, that still wasn't a strange sight for me. "Ah, that's the laughing woman," I said. The laughing woman was pretty famous in our part of town. She looked like any other regular young woman. Nothing special about her at all. Sure, her long hair was kinda messy, but you can see women like that anywhere. What was strange about her was, like her name, the fact that she was always laughing. Her laugh was like leaking air, a particular laugh that spread like it was wet air while drool dribbled out of her mouth. And so, everyone called her the Laughing Woman, and the ladies who worked the register called her Miss Laughter. She seemed a little crazy, but other than her laughter, she didn't bother anyone, so nobody took much notice of her. And even if she did bother someone, it wouldn't be long before they pretended like they didn't see her as well. Thinking back on it now, Omura was pretty drunk when he saw her. "I'm gonna go have a bit of fun with her," he said, and approached the laughing woman. I think I was pretty drunk as well, but at any rate, I didn't do anything to stop him. "Hey you," Omura said bluntly. "What's so funny?" The laughing woman didn't answer him. She just laughed. "Oi, answer me. What's so funny when the world is going through such rough times right now, huh?" We talked a lot of shit about other people together, but I think it was the first time he said it directly to someone's face, and that was probably because he was drunk. But the woman continued to laugh and said nothing. Omura kept pestering her, but in the end he got pissed off and walked away. What the hell is wrong with her? This is boring. Come on, let's go. We put some snacks in the basket and made our way towards the beer. Omura immediately grabbed some, but I felt like something different, so I grabbed some shochu instead. Then, Omura suddenly gasped. I turned around, and he was standing face to face with the laughing woman. Spittle landed on his face as she laughed. His hands were out and shoving her away in an instant. She stumbled and landed on her backside, but she continued laughing. Other customers and staff stared at them from a distance. I grabbed a few more shochu cans at random and hurried with Omura towards the registers, wanting to get out of the awkward situation. I thought about apologizing to the laughing woman, but I had no idea what was going on, and I thought it would be strange if I apologized, so I didn't. I asked Omura afterwards what happened. I was spacing out while you were choosing what to drink, and then I heard a creepy laugh by my ear. I jumped and turned around and her face was right in front of me, he said. Then, because she creeped him out, he shoved her away immediately. "If you look at her closely," he said, and then trailed off and wouldn't say any more. After we got back to my apartment, we started drinking again, but Omura remained quiet. An awkward silence continually descended upon us, and with nothing to say, Omura's eyes roamed around the room. Then, he suddenly said, "You want to play a game?" He didn't often play games, but we put one in. Soon we were both really into it, and Omura got his old energy back. Soon we were approaching the time of the last buses for the night, so Omura left to go home. By that point, I'd entirely forgotten about what happened at the supermarket. The next day, Omura started acting strange. For starters, he was constantly listening to music on his Walkman. That alone wasn't very strange, but he refused to look at anybody while he was working, and if you asked him something, he'd brush you off and not take out his earphones. The music was blasting loudly from them, so loud that even we could hear it. I felt like something was off, but I didn't say anything at the time. This went on until lunchtime. I went to ask him if he wanted to go out and grab some lunch, but he quickly got up and walked out alone, his earphones in. He didn't take them out for the rest of the day. Of course, this was strange, so one of his senior colleagues berated him about it. After that, he stopped listening to it, but then he started muttering to himself constantly. He didn't do it quietly, though. "Shut up!" he screamed and yelled in a loud voice. His nearby colleagues warned him to be quiet, but he didn't listen to them. Honestly, everyone was freaked out. Unable to take it anymore, I told Omura to meet me after work to talk about it. He hesitated at first, but he said if we went somewhere busy, he'd talk, so we went to a nearby family restaurant. The restaurant was reasonably crowded, and numerous high school students were noisily chatting. "You've been acting strange," I said. "I know," he replied, and then started to speak of his own accord. It's kinda difficult to sum up what he said, but I'll do my best. After what happened at the supermarket, he was hearing the laughing woman's voice at regular intervals. At first it was faint, so he thought it was his ears playing tricks on him. But the voice was getting closer, to the point where it sounded like she was laughing directly behind him. If his surroundings were noisy, then he couldn't hear her, but if things suddenly went quiet, there she would be, still laughing. The restaurant was just loud enough that he couldn't hear her. Any quieter, and he would. The worst part was when he turned the lights off to sleep. Her laughter would echo throughout the room, making it impossible for him to get to sleep. Summarizing it like that makes it seem like he was more coherent than he really was. He kept screaming, "She's here!" and crying while he repeated himself over and over. It took a while to finally understand him. In the end, he was muttering about her cursing him, and that she had to be a ghost. All I could think was that he was letting his imagination run wild. The laughing woman wasn't a ghost. She was just a strange person. I mean, I saw her at the supermarket several times after that, shopping as usual. She was a real person. Her laugh was very particular and hung around a long time after she was gone, so the reason for his wild imagination had to be the guilt he felt. A ghost appearing in a supermarket? That was just stupid. No matter what I said to him, Omura wouldn't listen. He just repeated that it was a curse and that she was a ghost. I grew more and more pissed off. "If you're gonna keep saying that, then let's go to the supermarket right now," I I snipped. What he was saying was stupid, and if I could make him understand that she was a real person, then we could get rid of those strange thoughts running around in his head. Of course, he violently refused, but I forcibly dragged him out of the restaurant, got on the train, and took him to the supermarket. He muttered the whole time on the train ride there, frightened out of his mind. When we arrived in front of the supermarket, again Omura refused to go in. There was no way he was going in, he said. I suggested we look in from the parking lot from outside. Omura said he wanted to go home, so I grabbed him by the shoulders and forced him to stay. I think part of me wanted to make fun of his weakness a little as well. Still, we couldn't see the laughing woman from the outside. It was around the time I usually saw her in there, so I thought she would be there, but that was my mistake. Shit, I thought. If she didn't appear, that would make Omura even more certain she was a ghost. I prayed that if we waited around just a little longer, she would appear as usual. Before long, Omura covered both his ears and started trembling. I can hear her. I can hear her. He was crying like a child, snot running down his face. She really did curse me. But then I realized that it wasn't the laughing woman's curse because I could hear her too. I turned to look, and she was standing directly behind Omura, laughing. Drool ran down her face. I gripped his shoulders harder, not letting him turn around. If he saw her right there behind him, it would all be over. She slowly turned and headed in the other direction towards the supermarket, and her laugh disappeared with her. The whole time she continued facing us. I'd often seen her from a distance, but that was my first time seeing her up close. Although her mouth was open in a complacent smile, and her hair a mess, those eyes that looked at us weren't laughing. But that wasn't the scariest part. No, the scariest part was her mouth. Drool and spittle surrounded her lips, but inside her mouth she had no teeth whatsoever. Then, I did something selfish. Still shaking, I put Omura on the bus alone and sent him home. I didn't care about his wild imagination at that point. I was just scared of what I'd seen, and I wanted to get back to my own house as soon as possible. Omura stopped coming to work after that day. Everyone joked about him skipping out on work at the end of the year, but his absence went on for so long that they soon realized something was wrong. Then, last Friday, we found out that he was dead. I don't know whether Omura realized or not, but there's one thing that I clearly understand now. What sounded like "hia hia hia hia" when the woman laughed wasn't actually laughter at all. She was saying, "It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here." And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Don't forget, you can head over to kowabana.net/newsletter for even more exclusive Japanese horror news, stories, urban legends, and more delivered straight to your inbox each week. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Tara A. Devlin. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.